Hello, my name is Patrick, I'm a sculptor, and recently I sculpted a Beholder book cover. There's something special about that first D&D campaign. You're in a cavern deep underground, stretching your character's skills to their limits, and suddenly the warm glow of an eye is before you, and then another eye, and another, until you realize that this isn't a normal creature, it's special. It's a beholder. Recently, I was DMing a campaign, and I ended up with a notebook with all the different things and stuff that had happened, and so I thought the perfect way to honor that experience and to make that notebook extra special was to put a cover on it, and I thought the perfect thing to put on it would be a beholder. Let's check out the process of how I did it. To start, I needed a foundation, so I measured the shape of my book on some parchment paper. I rolled some clay through a pasta roller on the thickest setting, and I began shaping and cutting it into the shape of my book, cutting and blending to make one complete cover. I also pre-baked a few key shapes. I made a large semicircle for the center eye, and a number of sharp prongs for teeth. I also prepped some glass eyes, painting them in different colors. I used some foil to build up the casing for the big central eye and the lower jaw, and covered them in clay. I placed the pre-baked semicircle into position, and using foil and clay built up the shape around it. Once the foundation was there, I lined the eye with a lower eyelid and an upper eyelid. With the eye in place, I started building up the upper lip. I added some clay to shape in some cheeks, and with the basic mouth shape in place, I began adding my pre-baked teeth. They needed some shaping and cutting, but one at a time, with my needle nose pliers, I jabbed them into the mouth. I staggered the teeth, creating a menacing jaw. With the face in place, I began building the tendrils for the smaller eyes. I did this by cutting 10 identical lengths of wire and covering them with a uniform amount of clay. I also left a little bit of wire exposed for attaching the body later. As I worked on each tendril, I bent them into shape and held them in place to see if I liked them. When all 10 were done, I went about putting them in place, blending them into the head. Once the tendrils were in place, I began putting the eyes on. The advantage of glass eyes is that a slight pressure along the tip of each tendril meant that the clay would naturally give to the shape. This almost immediately creates eyelids. Once they're in position, you can go back and refine them. When the eyes were in, I went through and added some detailed texture to the skin. And with that, the beholder was finished. I wanted to frame the piece with some rough, rocky shapes, almost as if the beholder is coming at you from within the cave. I placed some clay shapes, blending them in, and then used some foil to give texture to the rock-like features. And with that, it was time to bake. Getting ready to paint, I used a dark gray primer to help the project keep a deep dark color. I began to apply a dark crimson base, and I used a dark grayish blue tone to darken the rocks. With the base colors done, the plan was to layer on lighter tones. When the crimson was dried, I lightened the tone slightly and began marking in some broad highlights. To paint the eye, I applied a pink base tone. I added a couple layers of white in order to make that white eye. I wanted this eye to have a goldeny hue, so I used yellow ochre. Made the eye look upward slightly by placing the core circle of the eye from the top of the eyelid. And then I outlined it with a yellow mixed with some black. I then used some black for the iris, making a smaller circle inside the yellow. And once dry, I drew some darker lines in the eye and layered on black and yellow to refine the inner eye tones. Finally, I added 2 white dots on the edge of the iris for the reflection of light. After the eye was done, I dry brushed some final tones on the upper edges of the beholder and the rocks, and then it was time for an oil wash. I applied a thick layer of wash over all of the project, and then used paper towel to soak up the wash on the highest points. And with that, it was done. Let's check out the final reveal. And there we go. I can now put this on my shelf as a really special memento of my D&D campaign. I'm really proud of how this one turned out. I hope you enjoyed watching how it was made. What is your favorite D&D monster? Let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more D&D things on this channel, please let me know as well. Please leave a like on the video, and if you enjoyed what you see here, you may actually enjoy my live streams as well. It's where we make all of these projects, and we're forming a nice community of chill people who like to watch and make art, and we'd love to see you there. It's a good time. And with that, thanks for being here, and of course, keep being awesome.